Hello and welcome back to Shelve Your Boots. I'm Katie, the face behind Shelve Your Boots. And this week we have Steve on the podcast. Welcome, Steve. And Steve, some people may know from the call, some people may know from LinkedIn from a group called Cognito. But if you could do a little intro of yourself and your leaving and sort of up to now, really.
Yeah, sure. Well, Katie, thanks very much for asking us on. We're very passionate about helping people transition out of the Corps and out of the military. We've all done it. So I suppose it's a good place to start thinking about 18 years ago when I left, the process I went through. And I'd served for 21 years, but for me, it was time to move on because I saw the army moving in a different direction. I left on a high, but I wanted a second career. And I found that the Corps provided a network for us to get into. It was called ICAREC then, but I didn't find that it really resonated with me, and that was mainly because I met a lot of folks who just said, "Don't worry, it will all be fine.
Yeah.
You don't really have to do anything." And I listened to them, and I'm not sure that was the best advice I could have done. And 18 years later, I now reflect on that quite regularly as part of what we do in Cognitio Connect. But fortunately, I got out. I got a job straight away. I went into sort of the defence sector. It was a soft landing, and it's a term perhaps we might return to. And it was a very easy move from working in Chicksands to moving to a private military company that was based out of Baker Street in London. And bizarrely, it felt just like a first posting. Another posting, the next posting. It's just I went to Baker Street and I was a civilian rather than going to the main building. The subject matter was very familiar. It was a mentoring and training private military company that was doing work in Iraq and Afghanistan. Many of the terminology that we used was very similar, and a lot of the people were very similar. So it was definitely a small step out of the military, even though I became a Mister. So that was my sort of initial soft landing, and then from there I moved into mainstream management consulting, where I've sat for the last 17 years, and I've worked as a partner in a global consulting company, but more recently I worked as an associate and worked for myself and worked for a number of different clients. And I've got the privilege of working with senior leadership teams around the world in all different sectors and markets, mainly in strategy formulation and team development programs. And in fact, I'm here in Zurich today with one of my clients that works in the petrochemical industry. So I know more about the production of methanol and ammonia than my O-level chemistry equation before, I can assure you. So please, hopefully, no questions on chemistry. So that was my journey. It's been fascinating, and that brought us on to sort of creating Cognitio Connect, which I'm sure we'll come on to in due course.
Yeah, and I think it is a common theme, and I like the soft landing part where people I think have done sort of quite well with their transition is to sort of step into that kind of half step kind of civil service / military liaison / consultant company that that is working alongside the military. I did it myself. I ended up back at Chicksands through COVID, doing security training back there. And there's been quite a few people I've spoken to that have done that little step that still made them feel sort of quite safe. It's a known entity, it's a known language, like you say, to then help springboard them and give them the confidence to sort of step on and out of that. So it's interesting that even from 18 years ago, that's still a current theme coming through even to now.
Yes, and I think a lot of people I talk to look for that soft landing, and what I try and alert people to is there's more beyond that, and I use the analogy of a moth in a dark room going to a light bulb. And I think many of us follow that track. The light is safe, it's the pathway that we go on. It's, you know, it's physical security. It's working in a defense company. But because I've had the privilege of working on a much wider sectors, what I try and explain to people is that there's a lot more beyond that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that light takes away everything else that's behind it, and it
Yeah.
sort of dazzles you to go to the security sector. And as we both picked up on that, you know, there's all sorts of advantages, you know, commonality of language, people. You don't have to completely reinvent yourself. But, and I think there is a but, and you may have found this, I don't know, but it's quite a crowded space,
Yeah.
defense sector. And, you know, having seen so many different roles and businesses, I'm just passionate to explain to people that there's so much more out there, and with, you know, a little bit of foresight, a little bit of preparation, and probably a little bit of courage, there are other opportunities there that people from our community can really, you know, really find a fulfilling second career. And I think that's, you know, that's an opportunity for all, really.
Yeah, definitely, because it is a very crowded space. There's I think, especially now with the turnover of people that are leaving, there's a lot of people fighting for the same role. And the issue you have as well is you've all got very similar history at this point in time. So unless, you know, you've been in for a while and you have done sort of the Iraq Afghan years and leaving, only those guys are the ones that have got a slightly different history of their military career, and they've got the operational and the theatre side to it. Any time after that, you're all going to look very, very similar going into those spaces, and then you're going to be competing with each other at that point.
Yeah, very, very much so. And I would also say that, you know, our capability that we provide to defence is quite niche, quite specialist. But you wouldn't be surprised to hear that, you know, everybody's an expert in intelligence and security when they leave, regardless of what their cat badge is.
Yeah.
And that works for some clients, and people make very successful careers. But I think that makes it even more crowded. That there's a lot of folks out there who, you know, rightly can say they've done security, but they probably haven't done it to the same technical standards that some of our colleagues have done.
Yeah, definitely. And what I have found as well, that has tripped a few people up that I've spoken to, is there is the security element and the differences with that, but also the intelligence. You know, companies labeling things as intelligence, and then they don't actually mean the intelligence that we're used to. So some people are getting a little bit caught out of joining these jobs, and, you know, they're thinking in cycle and, you know, the basic standards of what they deem intelligence, and they walk into a company and it's like, this is not intelligence. I'm not sure what you were thinking intelligence was, but that is not what I should be doing. I'm not trained to do what you think that is.
Yeah, very much so. I see this on a regular basis, and I think there is not a good understanding, I think, within our community, certainly people who are serving, of how you translate analytical skills and the in cycle into business. And I speak to many people who believe they're going to become an analyst in business, and that the skill sets that we have translate to part of the spectrum of analytical work in civilians' life, but it's very small and very narrow. So, you know, I meet analysts who are experts on gas trading pricing, and they're ex-gas traders, and they have studied the gas market for 20 years. And they can do wonderful things with spreadsheets, fantastic mathematical skills, you know, regressions, they code. And our folk on the whole are not suited to that career path unless they go back to school. And I think there is a little bit of naivety in terms of what business analysts are about. And we regularly see that challenge, actually.
Yeah. And so that kind of brings us nicely to Cognito, and kind of what the thing, like what you're seeing through Cognito. So Cognito got set up 18 months ago, you say?
Yes, yeah.
So what spurred that creation? What spurred the birth of Cognito with you and John?
Yeah, sure. So John was chair of Vicarec at the time, and he asked myself and a few others um, who work have got a little bit of commercial experience to come in and to review what Icarec's doing and see, where it goes in terms of its next stage. And a number of us sat around a table with some sandwiches provided by ICA, I must add. So we were fed by ICA to see, what direction of travel it needs to go to. And we came up with three conclusions from that review, really. The first was, I think, touching on the subjects we've just been discussing, that there needed to be a mentoring program to help people translate their core skills into the civilian market. And that was because the Career Transition Partnership is quite a generic offering, and it didn't really assist folks from our background. And that's not surprising, because the mentors that Career Transition Partnership employ have no real idea about what we do, and because of confidentiality, people don't really want to share their background with a mentor who doesn't understand the sensitivity of some of our work. So it needed to be a mentor or a mentoring program that had commercial experience, but also experience of working in the core. And I sort of use the term, it's a bit like a Google Translate tool. So that's what mentoring needed to do, is help people translate their skills and do that on a one-to-one confidential basis. So that was the first sort of learning that came out of it. The second was, there is a fantastic network of people that are involved in our community, not just from the army, but wider. And once we get in a room, we get on very well, because we have, a common background, and we may have worked together in, various places and around the world. And mapping and energizing that network was something that we thought would, again, really assist people where they wanted to find out more about, how do I do security in the pharmaceutical industry? What's it like working in data assurance in the civil service? What's it like to be a CISO? But those people exist from our community, and by mapping and leveraging that, we thought that would really support people leaving the Corps. So that was the second part, and then the final part was to reach out to industry and go and speak to industry and say, have you heard about these folks? Do you know what they do? And more importantly, what do you want from them? Of course, that would then feed into mentoring, because we could then say, well, there's a real demand for people to do threat analysis or threat integration in cybersecurity at the moment. There's a demand for insider threat coming up. Are you aware of that? And how do you then position yourself for that? So those three things came out, and but to do that, we needed a funding line, and it's not because John and I and the others involved in the project give up our time for free to do the mentoring. We don't charge mentees anything at all for the support we offer. The network is completely free, but we need to be able to cover our basic business costs, such as Microsoft 365 licenses, insurance, traveling into London to meet clients, to try and understand what their sector might be doing, and in the realities of the military, the military weren't in a position to be able to cover our costs. And because we were so invested in this, and we saw there's a real need and was a gap, we decided the only way to make it work was to create a commercial entity. And John moved on from ICA Rose, as it then became, and we formed Cognitio Connect with it, which is a limited company. But so people may be thinking, right, so how do they cover their costs if we don't charge mentees anything? We don't get any money from ICA or any other charitable status. We create relationships with clients, so employers, and they, in some cases, will pay us a placement fee, and that's how we cover our costs. Not all clients do that, and we don't expect all clients to sign up a commercial agreement with us, but for example, the civil service. We know people who work in the civil service. We could use them to refer people in so that they get a better understanding of what life's like there, and they may actually end up passing the civil service and going to work there. Now, we won't make any money out of that, but that won't stop us pushing people their way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a really important point for us, which is our desire to help people will always trump our desire to create revenue.
Yeah.
So we're always going to help people. We're always going to connect people, and we're confident, sort of in commercial terms, that we're going to cover our costs. And in the long run, we're sort of seeding the community with people who've gone through Cognitio Connect, who are going to look out for us, hopefully. But more importantly, when they want people, will come through us so that we can start signposting people their way, so that the network becomes, more resilient. It grows, and it supports our community.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, I mean, we had a chat before, but like you say, it is almost like that recruitment kind of sort of business, but not. It's only a small part of. It's just enough to keep you going, to actually help more people. It's
Absolutely.
not the be all and end all of what you're doing.
Absolutely not. And both John and I do jobs full time, and we don't have the bandwidth or the intent to become, a medium-sized recruiting company. That's not really what we're about. But we think there's a huge benefits in us still being out in the commercial space, because it enables us to create a much stronger network. We're having serious discussions with people about our day jobs, and that enables us to have better credibility when it comes to mentoring people and suggesting what themes are. So for example, what's going on in AI at the moment is very much a theme that I'm involved in, that we can feed into mentoring. If I was just a recruiter, all I would be doing is moving people from one entity to another, and that's not really what we want to do. We want to have a value add that helps our folks make the right decisions and right choices.
Yeah. So with Cognito, if people are still serving and they're not even ready to leave yet, is there still space for them to sort of communicate or network, or have those connections, so they can keep almost like a finger on the pulse of what's happening on the outside, to make sure they're covering themselves while they're in and getting what they need to make sure they are successful on the outside?
Yeah. No, good question. I understand where you're coming from there. So absolutely, we have a closed LinkedIn group, which we only allow members of our community to join, and there is useful information about courses and training and jobs placed in there on a weekly basis. So I think that would be the first point. The second thing is that we run employment clinics, and we get large blue chip corporations to host employment clinics, and these are all for free. The last one we did, it was in the City of London by a sort of top FTSE 50 company. And we get folks in the room and we talk about exactly the sort of subjects we're talking about on this call. And if you're serving, you can go on to that. The only thing we restrict is we don't offer mentoring calls to people who have not offered their NTT, their notice of transfer. And there's a number of reasons for that. Firstly, it's bandwidth. If somebody just wants to ring up and have a chat, well, that's not really a productive mentoring call as far as we're concerned. And I think we get a bit confused with somebody saying, should I take this posting or should I do this course in the military? And we're not really that equipped anymore to have those discussions, given I left 18 years ago. And also there's a presentational aspect to this, and again it's part of our values, which is we're not prepared to try and entice people out of the core or out of any organization to fill a post. We're just not going to do that, because we think that's self-defeating. So we do have that. There are opportunities, but we won't offer mentoring to people.
No, I think, and that like you say, is very, very fair. And I think with the Cognito group as well, I would recommend it to people that are still serving, because it is very active. You do see jobs come up, and it is a way of just seeing how things are being translated on the outside. And there's been a couple of guys on this sort of podcast that are ex-Incor, one of which, Daniel Norman, that did did transition really, really well, because when he was a corporal, he was signing up to charters and courses and constantly feathering his nest. So when he left, he was well established. And I think with Cognito and those posts, it's a really good way of going, oh, actually, if they're looking for those kind of qualifications, can I do that now? I'm in that space. Can I do it now as a corporal or a sergeant or a staffy? Can I actually get on those and get it paid for by the military? And then I've got it in my back pocket ready for when I do leave. It is a good, it's almost, I always look at it as like looking at the housing market. You constantly, when you're looking for a house, you're constantly looking at houses, and you get to a point where you go, that's a bit much for where that is. That doesn't seem quite right, or that's a bit low. What's wrong with it? And the job market, I find, is very, very, very similar, that you just need to keep a little eye on it and see what they're looking for, and what's hot and what's not. Like, say, AI at the moment, cybersecurity at the moment is a big thing, because there's a lot of sort of attacks going on. So they seem to be really coming up the food chain in terms of jobs and job specs.
No, I agree, and I think it's a good life lesson, isn't it? I think when you're in the military, you have a system that looks after you. It posts you, it develops your career for you, and that's great. It's a fantastic way of operating. It creates teamwork, it creates cohesion, it makes us proud of our cat badge, all of those great things. But I would say that you've also got to have that individual eye on your own career, where you're going, where you want to get to. And that's not only when you're serving, but also when you leave and preparing to leave. And when you get out, as you know, that there is no career manager for you. The only person who's responsible for where you get to is yourself. And I think, understanding that and applying that when you're serving and thinking about that will put you in good stead. Because the people I see who are successful when they get out have that sort of entrepreneurial mindset. They're looking at where those opportunities are. They're constantly looking. That their radar is there, and they're seeing, what opportunities that can they create for themselves. And that sort of goes against being a team player. But actually, on the outside, it doesn't work like that. You've got to look after yourself.
They were the ones when you were in, were messaging different companies, different battalions, going, what postings are coming up, what's in line, and putting their 3 on them sheets to map where they wanted to go. They were already preempting, and those ones are the ones that really, they had the postings they wanted every time.
Absolutely. And that is a really good mindset to get in when you're out, because you're in this all by yourself. And it's worth mentioning, I get a lot of people commenting. I think I've done just under 200 mentoring calls to date, from corporal to 1-star, and quite regularly I hear people saying, I want to do good when I get out. I like doing good. And I sort of try and act as a sounding board on the mentoring calls to challenge some of those assumptions. And I always say to people who want to do good, well, you've been doing good for 4, 8, 22 years, however long you've been in. If you want to do good, go and join a not-for-profit or a charity, or set up a charity that helps local children or whatever. When you get out, and I think this goes back to the conversation we were just having just now, you've got to look after yourself and your family, and there's nothing wrong with pursuing revenue, but pursuing growth, because in 15, 20 years time, if you're on a much faster accelerated promotion and career path, because you have anticipated and you have pushed, your life choices are so much better, and you've got so many more options. And it's a little bit of an area that people in the military don't really understand. Because why would they? It's all about supporting the cat badge, the mission, that's what it's all about. But on the outside, that's what people are doing. They're chasing revenue, and that's what companies are doing. They're trying to maximize revenue, and getting that mind shift in and saying, okay, I get it. Business is about maximizing shareholder return. How do I, in whatever function I'm doing, am I an analyst, am I information assurance, am I doing travel risk, but understanding that's what the business is doing, getting your head around that difference in terms of,
Yeah.
the outputs of a company is better for your career progression, better for the company, and you're in good company, because that's what most people are doing.
Yeah. And yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely right. I think there's something that people need to sort of look at as they're leaving, or when they've clicked, or just keep in the back of their mind. And I think it's really important is what is actually driving you. When you leave, because everyone always has an eye on the exit, because people count it down. It's I've had enough of traveling, I've had enough of not being at home, I'm missing my kids, or whatever it may be. That's the conversation you need to have with yourself when you're leaving. If you're leaving and the first thing you're looking forward to is being at home, why are you living in Birmingham and traveling to London every day?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of
those kind of jobs. It's like, what do you want? And for myself, it was, I need a job that has variety and keeps my brain ticking. If it's too monotonous, I'm bored, I'm done, I'll be leaving. So for me, that was the most important thing. I need a job that keeps me interested.
Yeah.
And where can I do that job? Otherwise I will be very bored and very miserable every day.
Yeah, one of the bit of advice I was given when I was getting out is, don't worry about doing good in the world. Okay, that's not your job anymore. But can you answer these three questions? Do you believe in the company that you're working for, that where it's going, its vision, and if you can tick yes to that, that's question number one answered. Is it heading where you want it to go? Secondly, do you or your team, do you feel that you're assisting the company in that journey by what you're doing? So that sort of gives you the motivation, your purpose. Yeah, I can see that what I'm doing here helps us, move the needle. And then finally, do you enjoy working with the 6 or 8 people that you're either direct reporting to, or your sort of small circle that you interact with on a daily basis? Do you actually like those people? If you can answer yes to all 3 of those questions, you're probably doing better than 60% of the working population. So it's about understanding, as you say, what's important to you, and say this quite often on mentoring calls, whether you're making yellow ducks or drone technology, those 3 questions remain the same. And then you get your motivation through the people you work with. Do you get a kick out of coaching people and developing junior staff and bringing all of those great skills that you've got from the military into a civilian workplace? Have you assisted that needle moving around a little faster because of the work that you've done? So that's how you get your motivation, and that's not a bad thing.
No, absolutely not. And it's something that, I mean, I left and I didn't have that conversation with myself. I kind of went back into kind of in analysis, security industry. COVID hit. I was traveling from, junction 23 to junction 13 every day, or 4 days a week at the time, through COVID. And it got to a point where I just sat down and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Why am I flogging myself like this? This can't continue. And it ended up being a very sort of inward, serious conversation with myself of what do I want to do? If I want to stay in security and int, I live in the East Midlands. Those jobs at the time were coming up in like Birmingham, Manchester, London. I'm going to have to move or travel. And what's doing my head in is the travel. So that I've got to kind of strike a line through that. So what am I going to do now? And that's where I ended up taking a complete left turn at the traffic lights and went back to international trade. And it ended up being a really happy accident, because I thought I was taking a real heavy left turn, thinking, well, I'm leaving it all behind. I won't require any of those 10 years anymore, really. And then as I've come back into it and continue to do it, international trade kind of neatly meets the Incore, because then you start talking about Russian sanctions, you start talking about trade agreements, you start talking about international politics. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, this is the bit of the ink core I really liked, is the understanding of international politics and, you know, what the hell is going on. And then with, you know, international trade, everything's changing every day, you know, but you also get crisis, you also get, you know, the Houthi rebels, you also get Trump doing his tariffs, you also get all this other stuff cracking off as well. And it's probably, since leaving, coming into sort of where I am now, it's probably the happiest I've been, because I've ticked those boxes of, I really like the company I work for, I really like the people that are around me, I like the atmosphere of the company, and I really enjoy what I'm doing, because it's ticks that box for me of, it's different every day. There's always a problem, solve. So much so people at work have said your job is constant problems, and they would hate it. But
Yeah.
for me, it feeds that brain that's like, no, we need to fix things. We need to fix things every day.
And I think the challenge is for a lot of the folks I speak to is that they get blinded by that light, and they're the
Yeah,
moth, and they don't know what's behind it. And the longer you're out, the longer you can see that there are opportunities there. And you know, I always talk to people about, you know, sales. You know, there are certain
yeah,
people from our background who, you know, are very good at talking to people,
yeah,
very good at eliciting information,
yeah,
um, and they are so well suited to a sales role. Now, sales roles aren't without risk, because you know your base salaries tend to be a bit lower, but if you get
yeah,
it right,
yeah,
then you know you can be on some very serious packages.
yeah,
Um, uh, I talk to people about facilities management. You know,
yeah,
most people have no idea what facilities management's about, but anybody who's served as an NCO in the military is
yeah,
perfect facilities management. It's about organizing people,
yeah,
solving problems, doing governance to make sure people are working to, you know, to procedures. Um, but most people have not even thought about that, because
yeah,
they go to this shiny light of the instant security field. And you know, there are certain fields there that it works very well, but I think for many, it's that opportunity to see what else is out there.
yeah,
And you know, there are so many people from our cat badge who are working in some really interesting, fascinating places. You know, from, you know, members of the House of Lords through, you know, ministers to all sorts of things.
yeah,
Now, if they can do it, then there's no reason others can't do something similar.
yeah,
But it just needs that, you know, a little bit of assistance and that ambition to go and do stuff, because you know we employ smart people, but it's
yeah,
just helping them get there, which I think is part of what we try and do, and
yeah,
to try and challenge that assumption. I mean, one of the things you touched on there was sort of work from home, and a lot of people I speak to say they want a better work-life balance,
yeah,
and I always ask them what that means,
yeah,
because I think it's really important to understand that um, in the military and then in the core, the gene pool is quite small when you look at actually the working population in the UK, and there are a lot of people chasing good jobs, and you know
hmm,
the average wage in the UK at the moment is £36,000 a year. So
yeah,
by definition, if you want to earn more than 36,000, you've got to be above the average.
yeah,
So so people are people are commuting 2 to 3 hours to earn 40K a year.
yeah,
Um, there are people, you know, who put a lot on the line every day,
hmm,
you know, to keep the wolves from the door. And I think it's just worth bearing in mind when you come out of the military, you want control of your life,
hmm,
but you may not necessarily get the perfect work-life balance that
yeah,
you're after.
yeah,
And what I mean by control is nobody's going to ring you up on a Monday morning and say, sorry, you're going on exercise for 3 weeks. You
yeah,
deploy tomorrow. That's not going to happen. So you've got control over your destiny, but you know you've got to understand the context of where most people are working, how hard they work, the hours they work, and it's just worth bearing in that in mind and reminding people of that. I mean, work from home, it always comes up on calls.
yeah,
I get probably about 50% of people who say, um, you know, I just want a nice little job. I want to earn £50,000 a year, and I want to work from home. And
mm,
my answer is, yeah, well, that's what the rest of the population want, but they can't achieve that. So what are we going to do to try and make sure
yeah,
we can achieve that?
yeah,
But I get lots of people, because we also speak to people who are veterans who've left a number of years ago and want some support. And a number of them are saying actually work from home didn't do them any good.
Yeah.
because I wasn't mentored. I didn't get the water cooler talk. I didn't get the chat in the office. I wasn't collaborating as much. And I feel that I've been left behind. And I
Yeah.
now want to get back into the office. So, it's everybody's personal circumstances. These things change. When I left, I wanted to spend, more time with my family. And then I realized that wasn't going to happen. So I had
Yeah.
to, I had to give on that. So I think work from home and just understanding, how tough it is out there.
Yeah.
I don't want to try and put people off. Unemployment's up. It's a tough market at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And work from home isn't for everyone. And I think as well, when you leave the military, it can be quite dangerous because you're instantly isolated in a
Absolutely,
situation where you already feel quite isolated because you're
absolutely.
leaving and you're going into a
Yeah,
civilian company and you
yeah,
haven't got a clue what anything's doing. What the hell is
yeah,
a CFO? What the hell
yeah,
is a CEO? What the
yeah,
hell do they do in their job? And
yeah.
then you're on your own,
Absolutely.
and then it can become quite dangerous sort of position to be in because you could start to spiral
Yes.
in that moment. I mean, I didn't start working from home really until after COVID. And I was still, because we were on a military site, so we were still working, and we were key workers at that point. So I was still getting that connection and that communication while I built my life at home and my relationships and friends at home, and my sort of day-to-day life at home. So then when I
Yeah.
did step back and go to work from home for a few days a week, everything was established. I
Yeah.
had a network of people. I had friends. I could literally close my laptop, nip out and see someone. I think if I'd have done it sooner, I think I would have really struggled, because even though I'd had my house while I was in, I was never here. So I didn't meet anyone. I didn't know anyone where I'd
Yeah.
bought a house. So
Yeah.
I think it can be, yeah, just to be wary of what is your setup when you leave, if that's
Yes.
what you're going to go for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing with work from home is that it is reducing on the whole. And I know people who've started off, done their first 6 months probation with 2 or 3 days work from home. Then at the end of the probation, people have said, right, we want you in the office every day
Yeah.
now. So I think it is changing. I always advise people that, you know, unless there are some very peculiar, very particular personal circumstances, which mean you've got to work from home, go in with an open mind, secure the job, secure
Hmm.
the, secure, have that safe belay point. Go and prove yourself, and then after 6 to 8 months, if the company has a work from home policy, you're probably in a better position to negotiate 1 or 2
Yeah.
days then. So that would always be my advice on it. Now, obviously, everybody's got their own personal circumstances, but um, it's a better position to be in, I would say. Secure that job, and then if it's really not the job you want to do, then it's easier once you're out and you're in a civilian job to find another one than it is, because your CV is beginning to look populated with that mythical commercial experience that everybody talks about but can't define.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as well with a lot of companies now, when there is work from home capability or the hybrid capability, it's it can be there as 1 or 2 days, but also it could be, I don't know, your boiler's gone and you've got to be at home for a tech to come over and fix your boiler. Well, I can still work. I still have a laptop. I don't have to book a day off anymore, which benefits the company, but also benefits you.
Exactly.
You're not losing a day's holiday. So that flexibility starts to come into your life quite naturally with those kind of events, unlike when you were in the military.
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't do half the stuff that we did from home. We have to be in an office, we have to be behind a door. um so even that in itself is quite a nice place to be, that you can have that flexibility of, oh, I've got
Exactly.
the dentist, or the kids got a nativity, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. You sort of finding now a lot of companies are like, oh yeah, well, you have that Friday work from home, that's
It,
fine, because they're still
it's
getting you working, you're not booking the day off.
Exactly, but you're in a much better position once you've established
Yeah.
trust and demonstrated your capabilities, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that would definitely be my advice.
Yeah. What are the sort of, with people that are coming through sort of lately, what's the sort of themes and struggles, or kind of points that people are just sort of the humps in the road that people are sort of getting themselves stuck on? Is there any sort of common themes with our guys?
Yeah, so I think the first one is it's a emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And despite all, all of the support that the military throws your way and the fact that your mates have left, at the end of the day, once you've signed off, you do sit there at night going, oh my goodness, how am I going to pay the bills?
Yeah.
And how are things? You've gone from a very structured existence to a completely unstructured one. And I think that is, I would say, what a number of people struggle with.
Yeah.
And I often say to people that you've got to be able to deal with the ambiguity of civilian life.
Yeah.
And whilst you may move into, straight into a job, at some point that ambiguity will kick in, because either the company won't make as much money and they've got to start making people redundant, or you've got to start making people redundant. The company may be bought out, which then means there's they downsize because of they've got economies of scale, because they can do that, or the market changes, or something happens, and you're on this much less firm foundation than you've been on for the last few years. So that roller coaster ride, okay, it is what you're going to face from now on. So I think that would be the first one. I think the second one is just understanding how to translate skills. And I say to people, I always ask people what they're doing in terms of networking, and everybody talks about LinkedIn, and I always trying to remind people that LinkedIn is a networking tool. It facilitates networking, and you've really got to get out and see people. So I think the other theme is assisting people, certainly from our community, being more forward leaning in terms of networking. And I think, as personality types, we're quite self-effacing. We don't talk about our work. We don't go to the mess and say, I've just read this report, or I've just been doing this investigation, because that's not the sort of people that we employ in our organizations. And I often, joke about, you've got to become a Royal Marine PTI for a couple of months and really sell yourself, because nobody will know who you are and what you've got unless you tell them. And it sort of goes back to being, opportunistic, entrepreneurial. You do actually have to lose a bit of the grey man or woman person, and move into a new space of, if I'm not pushing this, nobody else will. And I think, again, that is quite difficult for us, but it can make such a huge difference.
I think like, especially with your first point, I think the thing where I fell down was I was a bit naive in my head. I was like, well, Marine Corps, I'll be fine. I had a job before, I was in the real world before. We were Army, but we were a bit on the line with that. We were behind a desk, so what, and we were quite independent because we were single augmentees. We'd go, I'd go on tour on my own and meet someone, and what, I wasn't like in an infantry unit where everything was done for me. We all moved as a group. We were all in a pack. So in my head, when I left, I was like, I'll be fine. It's not really that much of a change. It'll be absolutely fine. And it hit me like a brick, because you suddenly realize that actually, for what I thought I had control over, was very little in the grand scheme of things. And it was a sudden realization and kind of an overwhelming thing that, oh God, there's actually a lot that I now need to do. And there's even little things now where traveling still causes me like a sort of a bit of a wobble, because I'd have normally an admin order, what to pack, what time transport would be booked. Someone would be driving me to the train station, or I'll be driving myself in a military car. My room had already been booked for me when I'm there. I've got to now do all that myself, and you kind of just, there's a moment of and you get it done, but it is something that took me by surprise, because I joined at 24. I'd had a job before. We did a lot, I thought, by ourselves, and it took me completely by surprise, the reality of how much it was done for me at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree, and a lot of that chimes with my experience of when I first got out. I think, you know, sort of connected with that is understanding that many of the things that we did when we were serving, we thought they were very important. Certain units we worked with, certain deployments we did, certain capabilities we were briefed in, and we thought those were very important, you know, very, very interesting, you know, very worthwhile. And most of that has little consequence to the civilian world.
Yeah.
And again, it's understanding what your value is to wherever you're going next. And I think, again, that is something that it takes a little while to work out. So when I read people's CVs, they all talk about, I mean, they include op names and stuff like that. And what I say to people is that, you know, picture the target audience for your CV.
Yeah.
And I create this fictitious sort of story that I say, you know, imagine a 25-year-old graduate who's just finished their HR degree at Bristol University. They're in their first job and they're working in talent acquisition in this large company, and they have to. They're reading all different CVs for 16 different posts that they're advertising for. They're looking at financial people, they're looking at analysts, they're looking at facilities management people. So they're not an expert in any of these fields. And your CV comes across and you're talking about the Premier Military Intelligence Battalion, or I was on op this or op that.
Yeah.
You know, that person is not gonna do anything with your CV at all.
Yeah.
And again, it's all about this translation tool that you tend to write things in your CV that you think are important because they're important to you. But you know, your key target audience is that 25-year-old just come out of university, knows nothing about the military, who's working against a template, against a job spec. And if these two don't match, you know, they're not going to swipe you left or right. And again, it's just that putting yourself, and it's sort of stuff that we're taught, isn't it? When we get taught how to brief somebody, it's, you know your audience, understand the audience. But we tend not to do that in CVs, and again, it's all this framing, how we position ourselves, and it needs quite a bit of effort to understand that, and to realize there is lots to offer, but if you don't put it in the right way, you're just not going to get through the first filter.
Yeah, and I think some people sort of make that mistake of they default to the brag sheet for SJAR, and that's kind of how they formulate their CV, because that would make sense to a major that's in charge of you for your SJAR. It will not make sense to the level of the conversation I had this week with my boss. We were talking about remembrance and, you know, which one I went to and this, that, and the other. And I would just say, oh yeah, my mum and dad were trying to work out cat badges, and he was like, what is that? What word is that? What does that mean? That's the level. They, you know, you're talking to people that don't understand what a cat badge is.
No, I know.
And don't, so on your CV, you've got up this, up that battalion, this battalion, that. I know. It's just jargon.
It is.
Complete jargon.
It is. And again, it's that, you know, you've got 12 months to get out. A lot of CVs I see are, you know, people have, you know, just recently resigned. So they've got plenty of time to massage that and to change it. And if you're going into the defence sector, then it's not too bad. But if you're going for anything that is, you know, a little bit different from working as a, you know, a defence analyst or support consultant, working back into MOD, then you've really got to, you know, think again about how you present it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Steve. It's been fab talking to you. I'll pop some details of you guys in the description of this podcast so people can reach out, join the LinkedIn group, and get themselves prepared in the right way. And I think the main theme, I think, especially from the INCOR side of life, and a common theme from a lot of people is please reach out to someone and just contact someone if you're leaving, and get the help that you need. Don't just sit there and spiral and worry and think, what the hell am I going to do now? I've done it. I've done the clicks, but now what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely, networking, going to have a coffee with somebody, sharing the challenges you go through, and what you discover is how much in common you have with people who are out and who were serving, and you can learn everything of the good things that they've taken from the military, and
Yeah.
you can learn the things where they struggled. And as soon as you start having those conversations, I think you stand a little taller and gain a little bit of confidence.
Yeah, yeah, that's brilliant. Well, thank you, Steve.
All right.
And hopefully we'll get John on, because John was meant to be here.
Yeah, he has a better face for TV than me. Yeah,
So we'll have to do another one now so he doesn't miss out.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. All right.
But
Well,
no,
thanks, Katie, and thanks for what you're doing with these podcasts. I think it's a great series, and the more that we collectively can do to help people and keep talking about it, the better.
absolutely. Fully agree. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Katie.